I must confess that since my English, as you can see here, is rather poor and uncertain, that I have written my paper in French and make it translated in English. So I hope you will forgive me if I read my paper. Well, we are witnessing a worldwide upsurge in memory. Over the last 20 or 25 years, every country, every social, ethnic, and family group has undergone a profound change, a revolution, in fact, in their relationship it traditionally enjoyed with the past. This change has taken a variety of forms, a criticism of official accounts of history, and the welling up of areas of history previously repressed, demands for signs of a past that had been confiscated or suppressed, an interest in roots and genealogical research, all kinds of commemorative events and new museums, definitions of the past enshrined in law, increased sensitivity to the holding and opening of archives for public consultations, and a renewed attachment to what in the English-speaking world is called heritage, and in France, patrimoine. However, they are combined. These trends together make up a kind of tidal wave of memory that has broken over the world, everywhere establishing close ties between respect for the past, whether real or imaginary one, and a sense of belonging, between collective consciousness and individual self-awareness, and between memory and identity. This memorialist trend is so widespread, so deep-seated and all-powerful, that it may be worthwhile trying to understand the reasons for it. There are two crucial factors, it seems to me. The first concerns what is usually referred to as the accelerations of history, the notion that the most continuous or permanent feature of the modern world is no longer permanence or continuity, but change, an increasingly rapid change. We must take the measure of this change for the way in which memory is organized. It is of crucial importance, for it has shattered the unity of historical time, that fine, straightforward linearity which traditionally bound the present and the future to the past. It was the idea a society, nation, group, or family formed of its future that determined what is needed to remember of the past, to prepare that future, and this in turn gave meaning to the present, which was merely a link between the twin. But the sheer uncertainty that now weighs on the future placed the present, which for this reason no doubt has unprecedented technical means of conservation at its disposal, and is itself obsessed with the idea of lost under the obligation to remember. It obliges us to stockpile, as it were, in a pious and somewhat indiscriminate manner, any visible trace or material sign that might eventually testify to what we are or what we will have become. In other words, it is the end of any kind of teleology of history the end of a history whose end is known, that burdens the present with this urgent duty to remember, devoir de mémoire, that is so much talked about. For the other effects of this acceleration of history has been to abruptly distance us from the past. We are cut off from it. It's what the English demographic historian Peter Laslet has famously described as the world we have lost. We no longer inhabit that past. We only commune with it through vestiges moreover, which have become mysterious to us, and which we would do well to question, since they hold the key of our identity to who we are. We are no longer on very good terms with the past. We can only recover it by reconstructing it in monumental detail with the aid of documents and archives. In other words, what we today call memory, a form of memory that is itself a reconstruction, of course, is simply what was called history in the past. The present, then, is now governed by a double imperative, since it is overlaid with an awareness of its own history. This double imperative brought about by the dimming of the future and the past makes memory the distinguished feature of our era. We are witnessing what I have called the era of commemoration. Now matter how vehemently identity and the will to remember are affirmed, they suggest profound uncertainty as to the nature of that identity and the truthfulness of such remembering. The second reason for this surge in memory is of a social nature and is bound up with what might be called, by analogy with the acceleration of history, the democratization of history. It takes the form of a powerful emancipatory trend among peoples, ethnic groups, and even certain classes of individuals in the world today. In short, the emergence over a very short period of time of various forms of memory bound up with minority groups for whom recovering their past is part and parcel of reaffirming their identity. Minority memories of this kind are mainly the outcome of three forms of decolonization. First, worldwide decolonization, which has allowed societies previously stagnating in the ethnological inertia of colonial oppression, access to historical consciousness, and the recovery or fabrication of memories. Second, domestic decolonization. Within traditional Western societies of sexual, social, religious, or provincial minorities, now being integrated with the mainstream, and for whom reaffirming their memories, in actual fact the history, is a way of having their particularism recognized by the community at large, which had previously denied them that right. And third, last but not least, the ideological decolonization that followed on the collapse of 20th century totalitarian regimes, and which has helped reunite these liberated peoples with traditional long-term memories that had been confiscated destroyed or manipulated by those regimes. This is the case, for instance, with Russia, the Balkans, and many countries in Africa and even in Asia. The explosion of minorities' memories of this kind has profoundly altered the respective status and the reciprocal relationship of history and memory, or to be more precise, has enhanced the very notion of collective memory, hitherto little used. Unlike history, which has always been in the hands of the public authorities, of scholars and specialized peer groups, memory has acquired all of the new privileges and prestige of a popular protest movement. It has become to resemble the revenge of the underdog or injured party, the outcast, the history of those denied the right to history. Hitherto, if it did not have truth on its side, it at least had loyalty. What is new and what is owes to the abysmal sufferings of the last century is that it lays claim to a form of truth more truthful than that of history. Memory has become a form of justice. In other words, memory remembers and history forgets. Nowadays, history is supposed to provide the facts, but memory the meaning and the significations. History, though, is what always founded on memory as a discipline that aspired to scientific status, had always been built up in opposition to memory, which was thought to be idiosyncratic and misleading, nothing more than private testimony. History was the realm of the collective, memory that of the individual. History was one, memory by definition plural, since by nature individual. The idea that memory can be collective, emancipatory and inviolable, turns the meaning of the term inside out. The idea that collectivities have a memory implies a far-reaching transformation of the status of individuals within society and of their relationship to the community at large. Therein lies the secret of that other mysterious shift which has occurred, the shift in our understanding of identity. The concept of identity has undergone a similar reversal in meaning at the same time as that of memory. It has gone from being an individual and subjective notion to a collective, quasi-formal, and objective one. Traditionally, identity refers to all that is unique about an individual, especially in a law enforcement or administrative context. Or fingerprints are an expression of our identity. We have identity cards and papers. The term has since become a group category, a way of defining us from without. Simone de Beauvoir famously remarked, "One is not born a woman, one becomes a woman." It might serve as a catchphrase for any identity created by self-assertion. Identity, like memory, is a form of duty. I am asked to become what I am. I am a Corsican, a Jew, a worker, an Algerian, an African. It is as a duty that the decisive tie between memory and identity is formed. Viewed in this light, they are governed by the same mechanism. The two terms have become all but synonymous, and the fact that they have emerged reflects a change in the way that history and society interact. At this point, of course, it would be important to describe in greater detail how this new form of memory is organized. I have tried to do this in my introductions and afterwards to realms of history, les lieux de mémoire. Let's make do for the moment, by way of conclusion, with underlining some of the more immediate effects of this recent surge in memory. There are two main effects, it seems to be. The first consists in a dramatic increase in the uses made of the past for political, commercial, or tourist purposes. One example of this is a sharp rise in the number of commemorative events. In the last few years, we have celebrated in France, for example, the commemoration of 4 important and controversial events. The 60th anniversary of Algerian independence, 212, the centenary of World War I, and the 70th anniversary of the liberation of France, 214, and the 70th anniversary of the liberation of the Nazi concentration camps, 215. There are all kinds of reasons for this proliferation of commemorative events, but they all go to show that the past has ceased to have a single meaning, and that a present that is overlaid with an awareness of its own history necessarily allows for several possible versions of the past. The second effect of this change in the way memory is organized has been to deprive the historian of the monopoly he traditionally enjoyed in interpreting the past. In a world in which you had collective history and individual memories, the historian exercised exclusive control, as it were, over the past. This privilege had been even greatly consolidated over the last 100 years by what is sometimes referred to as scientific history. To the historian alone befell the task of establishing the facts, producing the evidence, and delivering the truth. It was his profession and his mark of respectability. Today, the historian is far from alone in manufacturing the past. It is a role he shares with the judge, the witness, the media, and the legislator. All the more reason, therefore, to speak out loud and clear today on behalf of the duty towards history rather than the duty to remember, the need for which a few of us were proclaiming some 30 or 35 years ago. For the real problem raised by the sacred aura with which memory has known been invested is to know how, why, and at what moment the otherwise positive principle of emancipation and liberation on which it is based backfires and becomes a form of closure, a grounds for exclusion, and an instrument of war. To claim the right to memory is at bottom to call for justice. In the effects it has had, however, it has often become a call to murder. The time has perhaps come to bring against memory the charge that in his untimely meditations, Friedrich Nietzsche brought a century ago against history, but replacing the word historical by memorial. Quote, there is a certain degree of sleeplessness, of ruminations, of memorial significance beyond which any living creature is threatened with collapse and in the long run destroyed, whether it be an individual, a people, or a civilization, unquote. It is this message left by memory that we also need to remember. Thank you.